how do we all remain optimistic in these trying times?
And that means stepping away from the social media. It means you resist in the way that makes the most sense for you. And literally, there's 100 different ways you can resist, depending on your bandwidth, physically, emotionally, mentally. Let's be clear. Maybe you bake cookies for the people who go to protests. That is a form of resistance. Generating art or music or serving in your community. These are all forms of resistance. So please don't get in your mind that resistance has to look like XYZ. It is difficult to be optimistic if you're not paying attention. They are not omnipotent. They are not kings yet. They are not oligarchs yet. They want to be, but they're not.
I just watched a video of a like an old and retired veteran at a town hall like getting kicked out because he was yelling at his representative, and the entire crowd was like behind him on it, you know?
We are not lost. We have not lost. We are fighting for democracy. We are fighting for what's good and right and just in the world. We're going to tell you in this show there is much reason, much cause to feel optimistic. Well, hello. Welcome to another episode of Hopeful Resistance. My name is Sarah, and this is my son, Aaron.
Hi.
Howdy do. And every week or so, we get together and we literally just chat. And we decided to start recording it and to share our thoughts with you. Every week, Aaron essentially decides what we're going to talk about. So today, Aaron, what's the topic?
Um, so I know we're going to talk a lot about wins. We had a lot of wins this week. I know we're going to talk about another thing that you sent me, which is I think the broader topic will be how do we all remain optimistic in these trying times? And so I guess those would be like the two main things that we'll talk about. But as you know, we will
Digress.
yeah, we will trail off into
Oh, look,
conversation land.
a squirrel. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So
the wins, for anybody who has just started watching, I post the wins on my Facebook page because they're long form, and that's just the best platform for me. We also I post some on Threads, and Aaron will post them randomly on Blue Sky. He also has a Google Doc that we're starting to curate, and we will have the link for that Google Doc on the show descriptor page. So, Aaron, do you want to start with the wins or with Robert Reich's 10 reasons for modest optimism?
I actually think we should start with the optimism. This week has had its ups and downs, and I feel like I see
Oh,
this a
wait,
lot
we should
because
probably give the
what is
days.
it?
Today is March 16th. So
Yes.
we
So
should,
you and I interact with our viewers on two different platforms. And so what I see a lot on Blue Sky is a lot more of like the outrage that people are having. And I, along with some of the other hashtag blue resistors, we are I see a lot more people talking about, hey, make sure you're resting and make sure that you're finding time for you. And I feel like if we get into like discussing optimism, then if any of them come and if more of them, I guess I should say, come to start watching our stuff, maybe they could get a good message out of talking about that.
well, it's true. When we talk about hope and being hopeful combined with resistance, one of the biggest things that you and I emphasize is balance. And that means stepping away from the social media. It means you resist in the way that makes the most sense for you. And literally, there's 100 different ways you can resist, depending on your bandwidth, physically, emotionally, mentally. Mine changes from day to day. And
Yeah. I think I have it pinned on my profile now too, that thing that you and I talk about, which is like the action, information, and rest. And after we did that episode, I went and like made it my pin. It's like pinned on my profile. Like, here's this thing. And it's real. I had to make it short form because Blue Sky has a smaller thing than Threads does. But I felt like, okay, I'm gonna have mine to be like start small. Here's two things that you can do for action. Here's two
100%.
things for information. Here's, and then for rest, just whatever. Just whatever.
And it's interesting that some of the people that I talk to who are skeptical or dubious or hesitant to engage in resistance to the current administration's actions have this mental vision of have to get out with their signs and protest or go door to door
Which
to
is
do.
a great way, but you don't have to do that.
These are wonderful things, but uh, uh, there is not a requirement that you have to do XYZ. And
Right.
you've done this before, and I'm always happy to do it. There are so many ways to resist that include things like protesting and going door to door. But there's also our two favorite apps, which are fivecalls.org and ResistBot. And I found a new one that is called the Card Campaign. And that's where you print off cards and you mail them. And it's
Yeah.
coordinating efforts across the country. That's what this particular app and does. And that may be your thing. Your thing may be, let's be clear, maybe you bake cookies for the people who go to protests. That is a form of resistance. Generating art or music or serving in your community. These are all forms of resistance. So please don't get in your mind that resistance has to look like XYZ.
Right. Powerful.
Um,
Powerful way to put it, for sure.
yeah, and so this has been a hard week. And to summarize quickly why, of course, the budget vote that was taken on Friday was, in my opinion,
I had to make a
essentially
face.
the budget vote was essentially almost a no-win scenario, although I do have some legitimate specific concerns about the powers that were granted to the current administration that have not been granted before, but that's not what we're here to talk about today. The
Right.
other thing was the legislation in West Virginia. Not going to talk about that today. And there was, Texas's legislation about felony fraud if you are a transgendered person.
Right. Writing
Because of course, these are
the
the most important
wrong.
things we need to be doing in the
Yeah, of
world.
course.
Yeah.
These what could be? Yeah. All right. Let's
Important.
start. You know what? Let's shift back to we talked about optimism. Can I read the first one? You normally
I
read
want
the.
you to read the
We can
first.
like take these
You'll
in
get
order.
great. You'll have great joy reading that one.
Yeah, so the first one, and I'm not gonna read the whole thing. I think we can just read the bullet points and
I
then
think
get
so.
into it.
And then chat about them. Yeah,
Yeah. So the first bullet point on this is the Trump slump is worsening.
it's true. And I will say, with a few exceptions, there are some staunch Trumpers that I know, MAGA people. I have not cut off ties with all of them just because I would like to keep my, thumb on the pulse
Yeah.
of that. But there are a lot of people who are like, I did not think the leopard was going to eat my face.
Yeah.
And so,
No. Yeah, it's like that thing where it's like, what are they gonna do? Shoot me? Someone shortly before being shot. Like it's just like
right. When we talk about the Trump slump, I think it's important that we talk about measurable things. And although I'm not a big, huge fan of polls, that is the second bullet that he makes that I think feeds into the Trump slump. There is a consistency across all the polls that the current administration's numbers. The felon in charge, you and I talked about that. Well, let's
yeah,
load.
I call him Donnie Boy.
Yeah, the felon in charge, his numbers are slumping, but a lot of chaos and confusion does not lend to people feeling confident in you. And I
Right.
think that the the Trump slump is actually, it hurts. I mean, I'm not going to deny that it hurts, but it is actually a good thing to see that all of this chaos and confusion is not helping anything.
It's not helping. Yeah, you already hit it. The second one is that Trump support continues to tank. Yeah, I was looking at it today, and I guess we're up to like 53% disapproval. So whenever he came in, it was pretty,
It's like
if I
40.
remember, it was like 48, 47. It's pretty evenly
It
split
was
between approval and
it was actually
disapproval.
one of the lowest ones that had ever been since they
Right.
started measuring, but now it's
Yeah. No,
Got more.
it's basically gone the complete opposite direction. Which if I remember, and I'd have to go look to make sure that I'm remembering correctly, by the end of his presidency, his disapproval was really bad. I mean, it was
Well, and these are two different measurements we're talking about,
right.
approval and disapproval.
Because
These are
there's also the one in the middle of like, ooh,
right, yeah. But I mean, they take, like they do two different, they do quite a few different polls for approval rating or disapproval rating.
right,
But I think that it's important to understand that we have to take a moment to evaluate as we are looking for reasons for optimism and hope. This is the worst I told you so in the history of I told you so. It's all the way back to
yeah,
the caveman days when they said to their kids, don't put your hand in the fire, and the kid put their hand in the fire. I mean, all the way back to caveman days. This is
yeah.
the worst. I told you so.
I told you so.
And yet, it's important, I think, to look at the things that are happening right now and recognize that as painful as it is to watch, it is difficult for any rational person to continue to justify the insanity.
Right. Yeah, I get into a lot of online discussion, debate, yelling matches. Um, so yeah, well, and some of yes, but that those are so. I'm actually getting to a point where I'm thinking about recording those and putting them up on my own channel because I certainly wouldn't put them on here because that's not what our message is about on Hope for Resistance. But I haven't gotten around to that yet. And I find more what happens is like I said, people you'll be like, all right, fine, let's you know what, let's hop in a chat and actually talk about this. People won't do it. So it's a mix. But in one of my recent, like, I think it was on Threads, me and another person were like posting the inflation rate, what it was as Biden was leaving office and what it's gone up to now that Trump's in office. And the person was like, oh, it was never below 3% while Biden was in office. And then we literally posted a chart like showing like, yes, it was
Yes. Oh,
like
but
right
wait,
here.
that wasn't a credible source. Fox
Oh,
News.
I no, we didn't even get that. He misread the chart and then was like, even your own chart doesn't say it. And then I went and took a screenshot showing, like, look at the date. This is in August 24. Look at here's the percentage.
Well, and this is the thing, and I think for anyone who's watching this, like trying to decipher where from our random chatting to pull optimism from, it is difficult to be optimistic if you're not paying attention.
Right. That's
And
that, or you just refuse. That's what I was. Thank you, because that's what I was trying to get to. That or like there are people that are already optimistic because they don't. They're refusing to accept that things aren't great. I voted to make America great again. It's great, God damn it.
so for this is the irony is that I do have the Trump supporters and MAGA friends, and I do keep those separate because they are clearly two different
Yes.
SECT sects of people. You can be optimistic about a bad thing. I think it's important to understand that we're trying to share hopeful optimism and realistic optimism. So when we talk
Right.
about the Trump slump and when we talk about Trump's polling is dropping, these are measurable things. You and I try really hard to not be like either doom and gloom or ridiculous optimism. I want to be radically hopeful, but I also
Right.
want to be blindly optimistic.
Right. That's a perfect way to put it. The blindly optimistic. Because I definitely have friends that are what you just they're blindly optimistic. They're like, "Oh, things will work out. They always work out."
Like my
Um,
friend who said to me, all is well.
um,
No, not
it's like the dog meme. Everything's on fire behind him and he's just like, "This is fun."
no, it's all fine. But see, also it's difficult. If we're being realistic, the people who are supporting the current administration are optimistic because they've been told that it would be difficult in the beginning, that it would be hard, and that there would be, I cannot remember the language that Musk used, that there
It's
would
gonna
be
get worse before
disruptions.
it gets better.
Yeah, but there was a D word that I cannot remember. Disruptions, and there would be difficulties, but the
Something,
point
yeah.
is that they've been sold a pre-bill of sale, and so we are legitimately headed to a recession, but they're okay because their leader told them that that's going to be part of the process.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the rest of us, this is the thing. How do the rest of us hold on to optimism in the middle of all this? And I'm going to skip in this list we're looking at.
Oh yeah, yeah, go for it.
Number 10 says that Americans, all Americans, are soon going to feel the effect of what he calls the Trump Musk chainsaw.
Yeah.
Now, folks, I am all for audits. I am all for limiting government. I'm all for reducing government, getting rid of waste and abuse and fraud, which seems to be the mantra.
Yeah. That's the talking point.
Right. Yet I would say to you, having been a global consultant for global businesses, a worldwide consultant for global businesses, you do not go into a company and do that. Now, granted, I don't believe a government, a country should be run like a business, but if you're gonna, you don't go in with a chainsaw and hack it up and expect it to
Certainly
run
not.
smoothly ever. So to remain optimistic, I think we have to say to ourselves, everyone is going to be feeling the pain, which may bring to the attention of the people who didn't believe us when we said it was going to get bad and not get better.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that goes back to like the recent thing where like some people are going to their town halls mad as hell with their representatives. And we're talking about as I understand it, mostly Republican representatives are getting.
Yeah, but they're not, Republicans aren't even holding town halls anymore.
Yeah, I know a lot of them
Tim
are.
Walz,
Are
which is a reason for optimism, Tim Walz is going across the country
yeah.
holding town halls in red districts where they will not hold town halls.
Yeah. To try and talk about what it is that like that basically talk about what it is that the Democrats are trying to do. I mean, they're a minority, but talk about like these are the ways that we're going to try and we're going to try and address your concerns and fix these problems.
And I think it's a reason for optimism because even in the middle of the batshit craziness that we are experiencing, there are Democrats out there who are fighting to hold these town halls, who are holding the town halls. Like Tim Walz has already had a couple and answering questions to the people whose representative, whose elected representative will not come see them.
Yeah, I'm hoping that he comes around to ours because,
Oh, I would be so jealous if you got to go to one.
yeah, if I do, I'm just gonna rub it in your face. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, yeah,
But
right.
no,
But yeah, I
I
want
mean,
to talk about another reason for optimism that I shared with my friend Kat this week, and it
yeah,
it profoundly affected her. I also shared it with a couple other friends, and they were like, "Nah." So maybe that message was just from the universe to her. But I want you to think about what I'm gonna say and tell me if it gives you hope. We wake up like this last week felt like we got outsmarted. It felt like we got tricked. It felt like, oh, the Republicans are savvier. And, the whole thing felt like it was orchestrated, behind the scenes strategies playing out in real time. And I woke up on Friday and I said, that is absolutely not what's happening. This is not what's happening. Or Saturday morning. I woke up on Saturday. I said, that's not what's happening. This is a predictable outcome of chaotic behavior that just happened to work in their favor. They're not waking up in the morning thinking, I'm going to screw over Aaron and Sarah and Kat. And they're not even thinking about us when they do these things. There's no behind the scenes strategy. The felon in charge and his ketamine addicted sidekick have been narcissistic sociopaths for so long. This is their modus operandi. And
yeah,
so they're not even thinking about us, which actually gave me hope. Like they're not smarter than me. They're just doing what they do. And people, normal people, or people are not used to this happening at a national level. This happens in relationships, not governments.
right.
And they're having a hard time responding, but it's not as orchestrated as we may try to we have to write a backstory that makes sense of it, which is,
Right.
oh, it's behind the scenes and it's structured, but it's not.
Yeah, it's like, the thing, I don't know, I'm kind of torn. I tell Elizabeth all the time that I actually don't think that Trump is a very smart person. I think that the people behind him are smart. So, like the people that are basically telling him, "Hey, this is what you're gonna do," are smarter. But I think it might go into the same thread that you're going along, is that they're maybe not necessarily smarter. They're just think they are, maybe, and then that leads to the narcissistic actions.
I
I mean,
think
I
they're
don't
bold.
know.
I think they're bold. I think that's what it is. It's like you and I talked
Right.
about in one of the first episodes that we did, fast beats smart
Yeah.
because they're faster. They just do it. They don't think about the legal implications. They don't think about the sociological implications.
Yeah, I know, and that's a good point. Is there's especially with like this measles thing. I mean, that's like that. Yeah, I know. In but that it does have it in here, and this is actually this. I've started seeing people that were anti-vaxxer at one point kind of start to be like, well, well, why is this suddenly becoming such a problem?
Oh my God.
And
They
you
didn't
hope,
understand herd immunity. They didn't understand herd
no,
immunity
they don't know how it
comes
works,
from 90% of the people being
right?
immunized.
And so what I, it's annoying to see that question because that question is the question we've been answering.
At least
But
once.
at least you're starting, I guess, in my head, at least you're starting to see them questioning. And I put it as you're starting to see the cracks
I
and
will
like
tell you
everything.
what I think a big crack was for my age group. So measles was big for you. Now, I will say for me, I fall in that window of people whose immunizations were given with a dead vaccine. I have to get re-immunized.
Right.
Just in case someone goes to the US and carries measles back to where I'm at, I could get it, which would not be good at my age. And I need to get that revaccinated. So measles is really predominantly a big concern for you because you have children.
Right.
For me, the big concern in my age group is this Social Security, which seems to have dodged a bullet right now because
Yeah.
the spending bill, the stopgap spending bill, this is another reason for optimism. The stopgap spending bill did not include any cuts to Social Security or Medicaid or Medicare, but it got the attention. The reason for optimism here is that by them closing some of the field offices and threatening to shut down the phone banks, you had people rioting. I mean, just they backed off on that
Yeah.
because I think that we're starting to see citizen response because the leopard is really looking at your face right now.
Yeah. And so people are like, yeah, and I mean, and that's the other part of it too, is there's so many people. There's people that were either supporters. I don't think we'll ever see MAGA shift, but I think that there were people that voted for him that were maybe supporters of what he said he would do that are seeing that that's not what's happening, and now they're shifting sides now, and that goes back to we've talked about that 100 times, and a lot of them are like they're starting to work. They're starting to come back in and be like, I didn't vote for this. I voted for lower egg prices.
I am trying
And I don't have that.
I am trying to not come back with, oh yes, you did.
Yeah.
I
Um,
really, if you're
I
coming
know.
back and you're willing to do the work, if you regret your vote and you're coming back to and being willing to do the work, and we are, I will say, those of us in the resistance are absolutely seeing people who are regretting their vote. Now, they're
Right.
not going to come out and say to you that they regret their vote. Maybe they're not always saying it to me. I hear through the grapevine, but they are doing the work. And that's why what you and I are doing with sharing how to resist is helping the ones who actually inadvertently or ignorantly voted to get him in office. Okay, more reasons to be optimistic. You want to read the next?
Um, s- yeah, so I'll go back up. So three is Musk claimed savings don't exist, and his businesses are going down the toilet.
Okay, these are two separate things. So let's separate them. The savings don't exist. I literally had somebody post on my social media today about
Yeah,
how
because there was the $5,000 check we were all gonna get from the yeah, some but there yeah, there was some And if I remember, and again, I'm sure I remember this. He said that they had found this $1 billion in savings, and it was only actually like $1 million somewhere.
Correct. And that could be
Or yeah,
that could be written off to a simple clerical error, which technically it was. But all of the savings that they have claimed, with the exception of about 2 billion.
yeah.
And when
I
let's
wish,
no, let's
yeah.
give him 2 billion, and I'll tell you why. 2 billion is like 0.001% of the $2 trillion budget
Oh yes,
of the US. So you know
yes,
what? Okay, you got 2 billion in savings. Yay for you. You're saying that you're going to trim 2 trillion. So all of it's been debunked. An article
yeah.
that I read and some research I did, it's about 92%. And that is reason for optimism, because people are starting to say, what is that show, The Wizard of Oz? There's nothing behind the curtain. There's a man
Yeah,
behind the curtain.
yeah. No, I think yeah, yes, and I guess exactly that. And I mean, I don't think there's any other. I don't think there's any. Yeah, so many things. I don't think there's any better way to put it than what you just said. There's like people are starting to realize that this is everything that they said is bullshit.
It's smoke and
And
mirrors. It is
yeah, and
smoke.
it was and it's by design because I still think this just certainly with Musk and definitely for Trump first term, probably not as bad now. These people have no idea how any of this worked. They just heard from and Musk probably more than anybody probably read some conspiracy bullcrap, like had no idea how any of this actually worked. And then so he was coming in saying, "Oh, we're gonna do this and this and this and this and this," and then realizing like, "Oh,
That though imply that he actually cared.
um,
Or do you
I
think it was
I
just like a target on a wall? Like it was a check mark. Oh, I cut I mean, I just don't.
I don't know. I don't know, and
I don't
and I
know his
guess that
heart, of course, but
right,
the
and
argument
and
is,
I guess
why
that's
would
the thing.
the argument is, why would a billionaire drop everything he's doing to come in and help the United States? And I'm like,
Yeah,
hey, have you heard about how many contracts he's gotten? And there were 32 federal investigations against him before he came into power in the government. And all of those agencies that had either sanctions against him or investigations into him have been gutted.
right. I mean, and that is actually the thing. Thank you, because that was the, I that's the stuff that I was thinking. Like whenever you're reading it, you're like, oh, this is why he cares.
That's what he
It's like once you start to look at it, that was definitely why. Was because, and again, you said it before. These people are narcissists. I mean, so yeah, and I think
reason,
that also goes back to if he did believe he was doing it for like altruistic reasons,
right?
that I mean,
It's
narcissists
still
tend
a
to think
crappy
that way,
way.
and then they're thinking about oh this makes they're thinking of instead of being like this is the right thing to do, they're thinking about this is people are gonna love me for this. I'm gonna be the best person ever.
I don't even know if he cares if we love him. But reasons for
Maybe. Yeah.
optimism here include the fact that the savings that he has alleged for his department have been debunked. 90
Right.
90% of them have been debunked. And even with like they're cutting off payments to people that they say are dead because they're in their, 90s. And some investigative reporters have found out they're not, none of them. They're all still alive, because when someone dies, the funeral home fills out a form to
And
notify.
sends it. Yeah. And
Okay, so
and, and it was definitely the way that they reported that because there was always that thing of like whenever Trump had his rally in Congress, because I'm not going to call it a State of the Union because
that
it's
was
not what it
not a
was.
State of the
So
Union.
whenever Trump had his rally in Congress and he was talking about, oh, there's like 20,000 people that are between the ages of what was it, 100 and 109. And it's like the implication, and I don't even think he knows because again, I don't think Trump's a smart person. I think that's what Elon told him, and he just assumes all these people are getting Social Security. But none of them are getting none of like almost none of those people are
Although
getting benefits.
technically, and I did research on this, and I'll need to find the research. There are, I want to say, between 20 and 40. I know that's a huge stretch, but I want to say that there's more than 20 200,000 octogenarians, which are people who are 100 years old and older.
Yeah.
And some of them are receiving Social Security. But if you think about a country of 377 million people,
It's not
20,000
that far.
is negligible, and
Yeah.
they're over 100, right? Um, but I think the interesting thing that we have got to remain optimistic about is you can lie for a while and you can have smoke and mirrors for a while, but
People will
at
start to notice.
a time, the debunking is simply going to bite you in the ass. Now, what bothers me is the lack of transparency that we've moved to with the
Right.
DOGE process, that now for security reasons, we're not going to tell you this and that and the other. So we still have reasons to be optimistic about the fact that his claim savings don't add up. But let's talk about the businesses.
Yeah, that's the one that everybody, myself included,
Yeah,
we're
I
pretty
saw that
happy.
grin.
Yeah, and I'll say this. I'm really glad that he's starting to feel that. I mean, he's certainly not, but that his companies are starting to feel it. I there's a couple of things, and one of these isn't optimistic. So if the company starts feeling it, then the board of directors within these like the people that could ultimately uh like boot him out, they could all come together and force him out if it gets bad enough. Because it's as far as I know, it's still not getting better.
No,
Like
no, and I
it's
actually pulled
still
it up. Uh, the shares have plunged 15%. It's the steepest drop in 5 years. But
right.
again, with the stock market going up and down, I mean, right now, and I'm looking at it right now, it's $249.98, the stock is. And it has to get down to about $115 for it to matter, because at that point there's a thing called a margin call, which means he'll have to sell his shares to pay.
Yeah.
It would be a death spiral for Tesla stock, but we're $140.
Yeah. Yeah, we're still, but I still think it was. I mean,
Oh,
it's
he's
still definitely for Starlink specifically. Actually, I know this one for Starlink. It actually made it where some foreign countries are not using Starlink, and that there is a foreign like satellite internet provider that
yes.
their stock went up by like something like 500% because a bunch of countries are shifting away from Starlink and going to that one instead
Well, and
now.
I know, I think if we, I think certainly one of the other um, reasons for optimism is that the world is.
You actually have it in here. Sorry, yeah, over the past week, shares in Eutelsat, the French rival to Starlink, have more than tripled. And last time I saw it was yeah, it was like something like what would that five whatever times five.
I will say I don't want to be the person that rejoices. I don't like being, I don't like saying I told you so. I think I'm trying to default to, well, it looks like we're seeing the predictable outcomes of the decisions that were made.
Yeah,
But I also, it isn't that I wake up in the morning and wish anybody's business to fail. Full stop. What I see happening is the logical outcome of vehement behavior towards a country. What Musk is doing to the country is having implications reflecting back to his business.
right. And I will say one thing that I did notice a bit is that you don't see nearly as much reporting on what he's doing, and whether that's because Trump pulled the leash a little bit, or because the people in the cabinet, because as we've heard, there are some people in the cabinet that aren't happy with Musk,
Right.
have basically been like, look, he's gotta stop. Like we've got to stop. Um,
Well,
so
interesting.
that is that could be another cause and effect of it.
Well, I think the more outrage, outrage is sustainable. Rage is
Right.
not sustainable. Outrage is sustainable. And I think as long as people hold the government accountable, or at least work through the vehicles that are available to us to hold the government accountable, it's going to matter. It's pressure. It is pressure. They are not omnipotent. They are not kings yet. They are not oligarchs yet. They want to be, but they're not. And as you said so beautifully last week, this is an attempted coup. It is not a completed coup. And we have to remember that even though it doesn't feel like it, reason for optimism is the wheels of justice may turn slowly, but they do turn.
Right. That brings me back to the other thing, with all the we were talking about all the lies and thing. It's like the lies always have to pay back to the truth.
Right?
Like, it's that whole thing of like if you continue, like eventually you're like all the lying that you've done, you're gonna have to come and pay back with truth. Like you're gonna have to come
Well, it
and
is
clean
it
on it.
is interesting. And a reason for me to feel optimistic is that I am seeing people who otherwise would not have spoken up or spoken out, stepping up and speaking out.
Yeah.
People much older than me, late 70s, 80s, are like, oh, hell no.
I just watched a video of a like an old and retired veteran at a town hall like getting kicked out because he was yelling at his representative, and the entire crowd was like behind him on it. And I mean, uh,
Well, if the
that's the
worst
kind
thing
of
that happens to you is you get kicked out of a town hall, we need to be doing things like that
yeah,
in the moment where we can do it without being arrested or without being shot or without
yeah.
being, you know,
We need to be saying, yeah, yeah, we need to be doing that now
yeah,
because right now is exactly when it needs to happen. And so,
yes.
yeah.
I
And
want to skip
sure.
some of these
Okay.
simply because of time.
Yeah.
I want to talk about Bernie. I want to talk about
Oh yes.
Bernie.
I've been watching that his tour as I get the chance. Watching a lot of his interviews, and I'm not the biggest Bernie fan. Okay,
I am not
and I
even
would
a little
say,
Bernie fan, but I love what he's doing.
yeah, I was thinking about this earlier because I knew we were going to talk about it because it's something. It's one of those things where it's like I may not agree with everything that Bernie wants or says or does, but I'm certainly not going to slap away the helping hand.
Oh, hell no. No, and I think
Um,
that's the other thing. We have to be more optimistic in that people are speaking up about Democrats who are cannibalizing each other.
yeah,
That if you don't like what another Democrat is doing, just then go do it yourself. Go do it better. The big beef on Friday with the vote on the stopgap bill was that there were 10 Democrats who were pivotal in passing the stopgap bill. But I will say they could not have been blind to the backlash that they knew they would experience by doing so. So I believe that they felt that they had to do that to avoid a government shutdown, which would have given Trump a whole different set of powers to push
yeah.
through some of the things. So my point though is this. That's 4%. The 10 that voted for the budget, the 10 Democrats that voted for the budget to pass is 4% of all the Democrats in
Yeah.
Washington. We cannot throw out 240 some representatives because 10 voted a way that we didn't like. There are still
I think it's going to have a huge impact within the party because they're already talking about primarying out Schumer. Like it's already, I've seen people say it like this that we might be seeing the what is the equivalent of the Democratic Tea Party. Because remember whenever the Republican Party,
100%.
yeah. And so if we start heading down that path, I mean that's what we could start seeing, which is probably what a lot of us want to see. We want to see a big reform inside
So
the Democratic
I
Party.
want to see younger faces. I want to see bolder moves. I want to see more AOC and more of these younger people who
Yeah,
are
Bernie,
may not
Tim
agree every
Walz.
little thing, but I mean, like even with Bernie.
Pete
Oh,
Buttigieg. Yeah.
Pete Buttigieg. I have a
I
crush,
like watching that guy
a
talk about
political
stuff.
crush on. I have a political crush on that guy.
I like watching that guy talk about stuff.
He is so articulate. But I think when we talk about Bernie Sanders, he is going town to town doing a thing called the Stop Oligarchy Tour, and he is speaking up, speaking out. He's thousands, like 4 5,000 people at a time are showing up to this. And I think it's important that we remain optimistic that there is not this laying down and die or rolling over and playing dead going on,
Right.
because you don't see it, it's important to curate your news. It's important to curate your information. And there's a lot of doom scrolling going on. And you and I talked right before we started recording, and I want to mention it is easy to just read the fucking headline and not read the article, and you miss important things. By way
Yeah.
of example, there's an article about how Trump ignored the federal orders not to deport some of these immigrants. And when you read the article, it isn't that he defied the order per
Yeah,
se.
it's not like the judge, because this distinction I think is important. It's not like the judge said don't do it, and then Trump like was like screw you, loaded up the plane, like got all the people, put them on a plane, and shipped them off anyway.
It was arguably a timing issue, depending on whose side you're on. You could say, oh, they were already in the air. And so, but if you read the article, you're like, oh, well, it just doesn't matter because he's
Yeah,
not paying attention. But that's not the case. So stop reading headlines and start reading the information. We provide credible sources for news. There are even some awesome aggregate sources that we list. Uh,
yeah.
okay. Let's see what else. Um, oh, I am in love with the fact that the world is united against the United States. Now, having
Yeah.
said that, I think it's important that they're not united against Americans per se. They are united
They're
against
really united
the
against
Trump
Trump.
administration.
Right.
And I love that because I think if nothing is going to get your attention, certainly a reason for optimism is that the world sees what's happening. Now,
Yeah.
you're living in the country that might suffer the repercussions through tariffs or whatever batshit craziness may play
Right.
out. But find some solace in the fact that beyond 75 million of us who did not vote for this, and I know that technically the argument could be made that there were more people who didn't vote for it, but they didn't vote, and so they don't get credit.
Yeah. Yeah.
75 million people did not vote for this.
They voted. I think the better way to put it is 75 million people voted against this.
75 million people voted against this. And
Right.
whether they voted for Harris or whether they voted third party or whatever, they did not vote for this.
Right.
So I think it's important that we're looking at the global right, the global conservative movement. And I mean,
It's starting to.
it's
Yeah.
starting to lose ground, and that is heartening to me. And the logic, I mean, if we could, I think I sent you a link to like a 12-year-old boy who was talking to an adult who was saying that illegal immigrants, undocumented immigrants were so horrible and they should be deported because they're committing a crime. And this 12-year-old boy says, okay, so let me repeat back to you.
Oh,
These,
oh, oh, he's not 12,
what is he? I thought
actually.
he was 12.
No, I want to say it's gonna bother you. I'm pretty sure he's like 18, 19 years old. Him and one of the other, what is his name? Parker something. They're big TikTok. So TikTok has actually a pretty large leftist, like, I don't know, uh, group.
Yeah,
Anyways, they following, I guess is probably the right word. And that guy, I can't remember his name, and Parker are both really big in that
well,
sphere.
I say 12,
So
15, 18. I don't, this is
yeah,
a young man who is
yes,
having the most logical argument with someone about, so you think someone who is
yeah,
a criminal should be deported, but you voted for a criminal to be the president. I mean, and then continued on.
yeah. And you just give like this, yeah,
I am
you start to see the big.
optimistic about that. And I think that
Dean Withers is his name, by the way.
okay, Dean, and we'll provide a link to that in this week's show notes. So
Yeah,
those are some things. I mean, let me recap. Reasons to feel optimistic is that the public, the general public, even the people who voted for the current administration are beginning to see the cracks in the mirror. That that you cannot maintain smoke and mirrors for a super long time. that the government, the federal judicial system is pushing back. There's a lot when you go to
of
the
that.
Google Docs section and you see the wins for this week. Even the Supreme Court is ruling against Trump.
Yeah,
And I think that's important because there was a sense of despair that, oh, the Supreme Court's in his pocket too. Well, no. When we're talking about constitutional things, no. And
right.
so that's another reason for optimism. I don't want to rejoice in the fact that Musk is business is slumping, but I do rejoice in the fact that someone who's abusing his position to sell his stuff is seeing
Yeah.
consequences of his behavior. And that the smoke and mirrors with those savings is not coming. What else did we talk about? Bernie rallying the Democrats and Tim Walz. I could not be, I mean, literally, I don't think I could be happier about what Tim Walz is doing with this red state town hall
Man, I
thing.
wish they'd let that, I really wish they'd let him off the leash during the campaign because he started the they're so weird. Remember that hashtag they're so weird? And as I recall, the party kind of asked him to tone it down because they felt like
Let's be nice.
um yeah. Um but and that and I remember I told Elizabeth, I was like, man, if they had let that guy off the leash, I bet you'd have had a bunch of young people out there voting. I
You'd have
bet they'd
a
have been
ton of young.
fired up
Although I
to
will
be out
also
there.
say this, and I'm not going to argue this with anybody anytime, anywhere. I don't have full faith and confidence that it was a legitimate election.
Yeah, I mean,
And I'm not gonna
you're not the only one that feels
yeah,
like that. There's plenty, and I mean, we saw glimmers of that whenever Donnie had that misspeak about
we've had
yeah.
commentary, we've had the analysts, and nobody's fighting that fight, and it's not my fight. I'm not going there.
It
So
is what, and it's yeah, I got you.
yeah. So we talked about the judicial wins, we talked about the people are seeing. So these are some of the reasons. Good Lord, we didn't even get to the win-wins. But
Yeah.
good. This is good. We're trying to, I mean, folks, Aaron and I could talk for an hour and a half. We're trying to keep this manageable. And so I think we have talked about wins. We're action items.
Yeah, we're gonna have the wins. One of the big ones that one of my friends was really happy about was the Romanian electoral body rejected the far right. This is the 12th win on that list.
Yes.
Uh, rejected the far right presidential candidate's election application. So
Woohoo!
and that just goes hand in hand with what we're talking about. The global right is starting to take losses.
So, my favorite on the win list, of course, is the fact that the Supreme Court ruled against the felon in charge on
Oh
two
yeah.
separate things, separate occasions. I also
Yeah.
loved how Mark Kelly went to Ukraine. I'm not a super fan of Mark Kelly, but he went to Ukraine. He was talking about, the people and the value of what we were doing. And I thought it was fucking hilarious that Musk called him a traitor and he came back and made a YouTube video responding.
I just
Again,
on
I think these are wins.
that.
So important when you, as a resistor, whether you're resisting in your heart, your head, or physically going out and doing things, you are rejecting the actions of the current administration. You are a resistor. And it is
Yeah.
easy to feel despair. Aaron knows I felt it this week for sure. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
I got knocked down, not just with the budget, but with some of these other things that happened this week. And yet, these lists that we provide for you, the win list and the reminder that there are things that are happening, it isn't over. We are not lost. We have not lost. We are fighting for democracy. We are fighting for what's good and right and just in the world.
Yeah,
And
and I know we're getting wrapped up on time. One thing that I want to put out is I know that whenever we talk about maintaining the optimism and that we go through these list of things and it's hard. I can imagine it's probably hard for some people to look at the as optimistic, but the like and you already said this. The optimism is in that what we're doing to resist is working. Doesn't mean it's over, but it doesn't. But it doesn't mean it's over in a good or a bad way. I guess is the optimistic part of it.
I can agree with that. When we say that it's not over, there are stops, blocks, there are blocks being put in front of the current administration. So
Yeah.
they can't, I mean, there were 1,000 workers that had to be reinstated with back pay that had been let go.
Right.
There are are federal orders to release grant funding. So there are things that are
That
happening
are being obeyed. We should talk. We should
that are
that
being
are
obeyed.
being
It's
obeyed.
true. Yes,
So
they did rehire. Well, interestingly enough, I'm finding that it's the departments that are actually following the law, not necessarily the administration.
yeah, and well, and that's the best part, I think, is that the administration tried to stop a thing. The court came back and said, no, that thing's not stopped. And then the department, which didn't want to stop the thing anyway, is like, okay, we're gonna listen to the court.
Yeah,
So
yeah, you don't have to listen to the court, but we're going to.
yeah,
And so when you're feeling down and out, I just want to remind you that there is a lot, there's so much going on. I mean, the list that I compiled from various sources, and of course, Ariella.elm on Blue Sky and Threads is hugely helpful, but also other people help. But the list of wins I have this week is like 35 things. That's not even everything. Those are just the big wins
yeah,
or the newsworthy, I guess, win. So there's a lot going on and a lot of reasons to feel optimistic. Be careful to not consume too much toxicity with all the craziness that's going on.
right. No, yeah, that's I exactly.
Yeah. So it's hard. You, you know, we're not sitting here going, oh, it's all going to be fine. All is well. All is
Yeah,
well.
we're not doing that.
We're not
Certainly
doing
not doing that.
that because it doesn't feel like it. Some days it doesn't feel like all is well. But I'm not going to run down that rabbit hole right now. We're going to tell you in this show there is much reason, much cause to feel optimistic.
Yes. And I do think there is. And it's like the thing I was saying on Threads the other day where it's like, I'm starting to notice that there's a bit of a MAGA influx on Threads, which there wasn't. And I pointed out that I have to imagine it's because people are starting to organize, they're starting to communicate, they're starting to push back on what's being said. So our enemies, and I don't mean the administration, I mean the enemies that are backing some of the administration's choices. Now they're trying to come in and they're trying to
Well, I think it's also
propagate
important
and
to know that the post that I tagged you in about trolls and
yeah,
bots, and I read through some of those and I'm like, holy cow, I didn't even think about looking for that. So
yeah,
it's important when you're feeling overwhelmed and defeated to remember that not everything you read is real. Not only is it not real, but a lot of it is manufactured despair, manufactured news. The people who come on social media and are trolling, they're Russian bots. I mean, that's what they
yeah,
are. We're trying to remind you that the fight is worth fighting for. Democracy is worth saving, and that it may not look like it did before we started 7 weeks ago,
right.
but it's worth saving. So, any last thoughts?
Oh, we are both equally bad at this,
Oops.
plugging our social media. So you can find Mom and Sarah Z Says on Threads, and then you can find me on Blue Sky under Aaron the Quill. Um, and then I have a YouTube channel, but I'm not really doing anything with it. But it's all Aaron the Quill. So if you watch this and you want to follow what we are talking about over the week, because we don't record a podcast every day, but we do post a lot on there, and then we communicate behind the scenes, obviously a lot. Um, those are good places to follow us.
Yes, and I do long form posting on Facebook, and I am the Zinkster on Facebook, but you
Nice.
can look up Sarah Zink, and I do a lot of research, a lot of long form posting, like long posts. So anyway, That's a good point. We do need to
Yeah.
promote ourselves better in that regard. Oh, we're up to 27 subscribers.
Hey.
Woo! We were at 19,
Yeah.
I think, a couple shows ago. So
Nice.
this is good, and we appreciate
Yeah.
you all. Well, until we get together again, friends, bye for now.